Thank you for joining. In this video, I'd like to perform a walkthrough of the features of Iris, our proprietary threat intelligence and investigation platform. I'll demonstrate how to start an investigation, where to look for guided pivots, and speak to a few helpful features to get you started. We'll start by navigating to research.domaintools.com/iris and put the domain we want to know about into our Omnibox. While I'm using a domain for this example, we can also use a phone number, an email address, an IP address, or just about any bit of information about a domain. Once I have the information I want to search on, I hit the search button to the right of the box. Today we're going to investigate services-softbank.com. Iris has performed a real-time count on the information that we have about this particular domain and compared it with the more than 330 million active domains to derive correlations. Let's do a tour of the pivot engine. We're looking at a table view of search results with sortable columns. You can choose the columns to display in the table from the Settings menu. Many of the data points in the pivot engine are right-clickable links, which invoke a menu of options for further exploration. We have our domain risk score, which predicts how likely a domain is to be malicious, often before it is weaponized. The score comes from two distinct algorithms, proximity and threat profile. Proximity evaluates the likelihood a domain may be part of an attack campaign by analyzing how closely connected it is to other known bad domains. Threat profile leverages machine learning to model how closely the domain's intrinsic properties resemble those of others used for spam, phishing, or malware. The strongest signal from either of those algorithms becomes the overall domain risk score. Directly below the domain are the guided pivots, where we're going to begin our investigation. A guided pivot denotes that through our extensive set of data, we have identified other domains that share a commonality, and if we hover over the guided pivot, a small indicator will show us how many other domains share this in common. By presenting the user with guided pivots, we're enabling a streamlined investigative process. Next, we see contact information, registrars, create dates, and infrastructure information. Where available, we also have analytics codes, website responses, redirects, MX information, SSL information, and top-level domain designations. If I highlight the domain on the far left, I can click on the Domain Profile tab and have a look at the detailed domain risk score, which will show us the threat profile and proximity. I can also look at the Whois history, the SSL profile if one exists for a domain in question, along with other information that looks like it could be relevant to the investigation at hand. I'd like to come back to the domain and bring your attention to the guided pivots. Iris has performed a real-time count on the domain and the data contained within our record of it, and sought out other domains that have data points in common. The guided pivot represents the commonalities found within our data set. When I hover my pointer over the link, I see what sorts of data I have in the guided pivots. When I click on the guided pivots link, the pivot engine will advance to the guided pivot noted. If I want to see what other domains share a particular data point with the domain I've started with, I can right-click on that guided pivot and see how many other domains share that. I can do a preview by clicking on the magnifying glass, and a panel with the domains appears on the right-hand side of the screen. If these domains look like they could be relevant to my investigation, I can hit the expand button at the bottom of the screen and bring them into my investigation. In addition to following the guided pivot, I'm looking for other signs of relatedness. By sorting by create date, we can see if many domains have been registered around the same time or within the space of a couple of days. If I sort alphabetically, I can also note if the domain names are similar in any way. I'm going to sort these domains by domain risk score, with the highest at the top to see which domains require attention. We can also sort alphabetically by create date, by expiry date, or any other column in Iris. Now I'm going to examine some of the guided pivots more closely. One of the things that becomes interesting with guided pivots isn't only the closely associated information with guided pivot points, but the outliers. When looking at outliers, I like to review the passive DNS data to see if I can draw any further correlations. For starters, DomainTools ingests passive DNS data from 4 different providers who are noted by the letters A, B, C, and D. By plugging in the domain with an asterisk and a period in front of it, I'll also capture any subdomains that are associated with the domain in question. When I conduct investigations, I find it beneficial to have as much information as possible to review. If I don't have the PDNS tab or the domain profile tabs at the top, I can always bring them into my investigation by highlighting them in the bar below. I can also customize the layout by clicking on the squares in the lower right-hand corner of Iris, as well as changing the order of the tabs that are listed. On the other hand, if you find that the amount of tabs is either overwhelming or a particular tab isn't relevant to your investigation, hit the X in the top right of any given tab to close it. The visualization tool can create a representation of how domains are connected by setting the different focal points on IP addresses, contact names, SSL hashes, and other data points. Using this representation of the data to pinpoint any outliers or see how extensive a threat campaign's infrastructure is after importing many different pivots into Iris. So let's move over to the Stats tab. The stats are aggregated by type and also offer guided pivots within the specific data types. Actionable pivots can be phone numbers, registrars and registrants, and IP addresses for both ISP and name servers. Also, when ascertaining whether a pivot is worth expanding an investigation for, limiting the number of domains that share a pivotable value of 500 or less can be useful. Anything more than 500, and the amount of data coming into an investigation quickly becomes overwhelming. If you want to share your investigation with other teammates, DomainTools offers a couple of ways to do that. If the investigation needs to be worked on by other analysts or investigators, the hash of the investigation can be shared in a group. As an aside, I have also been known to take the hash of an Iris investigation and drop it into Maltego. Should you need a list of blacklisted domains with the intent of blocking them at the network perimeter, dropping them into a tip, or sharing with an ISAC, generate a CSV file here. If the report needs to be a more official-looking format, an analyst can generate a PDF, which can be found in the flyout menu. This concludes our overview. Watch this space for more how-to videos, and thank you for watching.